Just a few months ago, ladies and gentlemen, Samuel Ndindi Nyoro was a high-flying politician. Members of parliament would flock to Kiharu constituency to benchmark, and Ndindi Nyoro would be invited as a guest of honor across the country to launch projects by other fellow MPs. That is something that even veteran politicians were not enjoying. This man was on a trajectory to stardom. So what happened? How did Ndindi Nyoro, who just the other time was being touted not just as the kingpin of Mount Kenya, but as Ruto's replacement come 2032, move from that to a politician who is struggling to be relevant by contradicting his earlier position on the economy of Kenya? What happened? That, ladies and gentlemen, is what we are going to answer in this particular video. We are going to answer the question, how did Ndindi Nyoro fall from political grace, from stardom, the next president of the Republic after William Ruto, to someone who now has to make contradictory statements just for the purposes of remaining relevant? What really happened? Allow me to welcome you to another episode of Raw Politics. And if you do find value in our videos, drop a like and also consider subscribing to this channel so that you are notified whenever we produce videos of this nature. Like I said, ladies and gentlemen, Ndindi Nyoro was high-flying, doing very well. And just to paint you the picture of who Ndindi Nyoro is, he is only 39 years old. Yet, this guy has been painted as the best politician when it comes to the use of CDF. And like I said, he has also been touted as the next president of the Republic after William Ruto. At the age of 39, Ndindi Nyoro has achieved more than many politicians would in a lifetime. A brief history. He joined politics at the university. Like most of these politicians we have, their political careers began at the university as student leaders. After which, Irungu Kang'ata, the current governor of Murang'a, picked him to manage the CDF for Kiharu constituency. Then, Irungu Kang'ata was the MP for Kiharu constituency. This he did with excellence, because when Irungu Kang'ata was going for the Senate, when he vied for Kiharu constituency, Ndindi Nyoro floored serious, popular, powerful politicians and became one of the youngest elected members of parliament. He was elected to parliament at the age of 32. So this is not your ordinary politician, ladies and gentlemen. Ndindi Nyoro then went for a second term. And here is the funny part. When people say that they won with or by a landslide, some of them are just misusing the word landslide. But for the case of Ndindi Nyoro, that was the exact thing that happened. He got over 60,000 votes when his immediate challenger got about 9,000 votes, less than 10,000. This man was almost getting elected unopposed. So like I said, he is a politician whose star has been shining. He was destined to be a star. And in parliament, he was the chair of the budget committee, and the president celebrated him with the CBS as one of those people who have done exemplary well in their constituencies. And so what went wrong? This is somebody who was doing very well. He is close to the president. He had no problem with Rigathi Gachagua. He was not an enemy. So what happened? How did Ndindi Nyoro find himself here? Let me give you another background. I want you to go back with me to the day President Ruto was picking his running mate. That is Rigathi Gachagua. President Ruto gave a speech, and in that speech, Ndindi Nyoro featured prominently. How prominent? Well, Ndindi Nyoro was openly described by none other than a deputy president then and the future president of this republic as the one that they were willing to mentor so that they leave this country in his hand. I am not creating this. That is what the president said. Because according to the agreement with Rigathi Gachagua, the president and Rigathi Gachagua were going to serve for 2 terms and then go home together. I even did a full video about this because people don't understand who between Rigathi Gachagua and Ruto betrayed the other. The deal was that Rigathi Gachagua and William Ruto were going to serve a full term together. Once they have done that, they would go home together. Rigathi Gachagua was not to vie. Instead, they had agreed that they would mentor young politicians led by Ndindi Nyoro. So that is how powerful Ndindi Nyoro had become. A young man who was being touted as the future president of the republic by no less than the deputy president and the future president of the republic. So what followed is what led Ndindi Nyoro to where he is today. Because at the initial stages, ladies and gentlemen, Rigathi did not really care, was not obsessed with Mount Kenya. And there is a reason for this. When he was elected deputy president, Rigathi believed that by virtue of his position, being the senior-most elected leader from Mount Kenya region, he was supposed not only to be respected, but he was naturally their kingpin. Yet the people of Mount Kenya didn't even recognize Rigathi Gachagua. And how do I know this? Because most of them at that particular time were openly celebrating Ndindi Nyoro. Started openly celebrating Ndindi Nyoro. And they didn't just celebrate him. They even had a meeting in Kiharu constituency by the same characters who are now behind Rigathi Gachagua, the likes of Senator Newt, where they declared that Rigathi Gachagua was going to even serve only 1 term. The 1-term story began in Kiharu several months before Rigathi was even impeached. And it was started by the same people who are currently running around Rigathi Gachagua singing 1 term. What they said there openly, and this is very important to this particular video, what they said openly was that Ndindi Nyoro was their kingpin, the person to take over from William Ruto. And they were demanding that William Ruto doesn't retain Rigathi Gachagua in 2027. He runs with Ndindi Nyoro as his running mate, so that come 2032, Ndindi Nyoro would be president. And Ndindi Nyoro fell for this. So while he would have said no, he would have said, no, I'm not going to go that route. Propping me now against Rigathi Gachagua is unnecessary. This particular kind of politics, barely a year after election, is unnecessary. Let me deliver for the people of Kiaru. When the time comes, after all, these people have agreed that they are going to mentor me. When the time comes, I will offer myself for leadership position. But he didn't do that. He really got excited, and you'd seen Ndindi Nyoro visiting one constituency after the other, launching projects, and of course with a range of MPs from Kiaru, from Murang'a, and others. The argument was that power has been in Nyeri, power has been in Kiambu. It was now time power went to Murang'a. There is no way it's just supposed to be crossing Murang'a and going to Nyeri. Ndindi Nyoro should have said no. He didn't. But that is not what brought him down. You see, by accepting to be treated as the next kingpin, he dragged Rigathi Gachagua from national politics to local politics. So I usually tell people that Rigathi Gachagua, he impeached himself through his own actions. He actually, whatever he did, he impeached himself. And he didn't even know when to stop digging. He was in a ditch and he was digging. Even when he should have stopped digging and got out, Rigathi Gachagua would still dig. When you hear rumors that you're going to be impeached and you know you don't have numbers, what you do, you make you find a way of reaching out to Ruto and quell this thing. Apologize if you've done something wrong and just go back to normal. But he didn't do that. He was like, oh, I was elected by 7 million people. Rigathi Gachagua. So he impeached himself through his own action. But the person who dragged Rigathi Gachagua to local politics, to be obsessed with Mount Kenya, is none other than Ndindi. Because Rigathi Gachagua went back to Mount Kenya to fight Ndindi Nyoro. And he didn't spare him. He didn't have very kind words for Ndindi Nyoro. He even demanded that the president talks to Ndindi Nyoro to stop sabotaging him in Murang'a and other places in Mount Kenya. Rigathi Gachagua even went to Rift Valley to attack members of parliament for inviting Ndindi Nyoro and giving him that audience, the political bonga point, if you may. So he did all these funny things himself that led him to be impeached. But the person who brought him to that level to do all those things is Ndindi Nyoro. So Ndindi Nyoro dragged him from national politics, where he was talking about things they can do in the country, to now chanting from one meeting to the other about shares and trying his level best to appease the Kikuyus by painting himself as their savior and the person who is fighting for them. All this Rigathi Gachagua did to fight Ndindi Nyoro. And what did Ndindi Nyoro do? He didn't fight back. He just stepped back. And that leads us to why Ndindi Nyoro is currently struggling. In politics, ladies and gentlemen, indecisiveness is considered worse than betrayal. Not making a decision when it is important is considered worse than betrayal. That is how politics is. Politics has no room for people who are undecided. Because politics, especially a democracy, it's about numbers. It's about people having their way while others having their say. And you must make a decision. Which team are you going to be with? Ndindi Nyoro, when Rigathi came back to fight him, he took a neutral stand. He never fought back for his space. No. He just took a neutral stand and allowed Rigathi Gachagua to destroy himself. What he didn't know is that this had a ripple effect. Because when these people accepted Rigathi Gachagua, the person they saw as their enemy was none other than Ndindi Nyoro. And so this forced Ndindi Nyoro to now try to redeem himself by not participating in the impeachment of Rigathi Gachagua. I want you to understand. He's the one who dragged Rigathi Gachagua to local politics. When Rigathi Gachagua came to face off with him, Ndindi Nyoro stayed away out of respect or whatever reason. He should have not. He should have either spoken and said, no, I am not fighting you. I am not interested in being a kingpin. You are our leader. Stop all this. Go and do national politics. I'm just a mayor MP. You are the deputy president. No, he didn't do that. He just kept quiet, allowed Rigathi to go mad, literally, with fighting him. And when Rigathi won, because he was not fighting back, when Rigathi won, Rigathi pointed the people at Ndindi Nyoro as the enemy. Somebody who is being used, I'm quoting Rigathi, somebody who is being used by the enemy. People from Rift Valley were using him. In fact, Rigathi even argued that it is Ruto who was using Ndindi Nyoro to sabotage him in the mountain. So who did people see as the enemy? Ndindi Nyoro. Ndindi Nyoro realized this, that he had been now marked as an enemy in a place that just a few months ago he was being celebrated as the kingpin. Instead of correcting things, instead of going out there and clearing the air, because he's a good orator, he can speak, he decided to be quiet. After all, he was not interested in the positions Rigathi was gunning for. He was comfortable. Chances of him being re-elected were high. But he forgot that when people who love you today have resentment against you tomorrow, life can become very difficult. And that is what happened. Note that people are booing Ndindi Nyoro in Kiharu. But in that Kiharu where Ndindi Nyoro is, people are loyal to Rigathi Gachagua than they are to Ndindi Nyoro. And this happened because he did not take any action. He was undecided. He remained neutral when taking position was important. And then, to make matters worse, when Rigathi Gachagua was being impeached, he could have decided to play to the gallery. How? by just going there, joining the likes of Nyutu, who remember was responsible for bringing Rigathi to those nonsense, who was fighting Rigathi tooth and nail. He could have just joined them and pretended to love Rigathi more than eternal life and vote in defense of Rigathi, giving speeches defending Rigathi. He would have still been the favorite. In fact, Rigathi Gachagua would be working with Ndindi Nyoro everywhere, and Ndindi Nyoro would be seen as the young person who is going to take over from Rigathi Gachagua, or somebody they can even make vie because Rigathi Gachagua has legal cases. No. Ndindi Nyoro remained quiet, taking pictures in office and focusing on his work. Nothing wrong with that, but in politics, like I told you, indecisiveness is punished very fast, punished faster than betrayal. And so Ndindi Nyoro realized later, when the ship had sailed, when Kikuyus had already seen him as the enemy, whatever he says now to redeem himself and get back their trust is treated with serious suspicion. Whether Ndindi Nyoro criticizes the government, talking about debt, things that just a few months ago he was denying. Now he's the expert on how to borrow, how to do what, etc. All this is saying because he believes attacking William Ruto might help bring those people back. But what do they say? They are like, this is Ruto's mole who has been brought to destroy us. No, Ndindi Nyoro is nobody small. I have told you, this is some brilliant politician. But his mistake, ladies and gentlemen, was refusing to take a decision. He could have just said, like Kimani Chungwa, this man with a dark heart must go home, so that people from Mount Kenya might reject you, but Ndindi Nyoro would still have his national appeal. People will still be like, yeah, this is not just some community leader. He is a national leader. But ladies and gentlemen, he made a very bad decision. He chose to be undecided at a time when making or taking a stance was the most important thing. William Ruto expected that his loyal friend, somebody he has stood with, was going to stand with him and was going to help him send away Rigathi Gachagua. Ndindi Nyoro was a no-show. So he didn't help William Ruto with anything. Allies of William Ruto no longer see why they should save Ndindi Nyoro or they should associate with him. Two, Rigathi Gachagua, while he hated Ndindi Nyoro, the community expected that Ndindi Nyoro would side with their son, one of their own. He didn't. So he neither appeased the Kikuyus, nor did he please William Ruto, which now leaves him in the middle. Now he has to choose. Which side do I want to appease? He has decided now he wants the Kikuyu votes back by attacking William Ruto, and they are rejecting him. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how Samuel Ndindi Nyoro fell from grace to grass, politically speaking. This is not where Ndindi Nyoro envisioned himself. I can tell you that because I have heard him talking. I have seen his ambition. He's been very clear. Ndindi Nyoro is not indecisive every time. Remember, as we were approaching 2022, it was difficult making decision against Uhuru Kenyatta from Mount Kenya. Police will be sent, you will be arrested, and a lot of persecution was there. But Ndindi Nyoro stood with William Ruto. Remember, he was even arrested at night with 100 police officers brought to Kamkunji. People rebelled and stood with him. That is why, because of that decision, because of being decisive, he got elected by a landslide. He was almost elected unopposed. But then he chose something that is unlike him, being neutral when it is not needed. And it is now costing him. It's my hope that you found value in this video. If you did, let me know in the comment section. I will try my level best and engage you, even if you have contrary opinion. We are just talking. We are all Kenyans. We may have different views, but the one thing we can never stop is ability to engage. So let us engage in the comment section. Otherwise, if you want to know how Ndindi Nyoro played Rigathi Gachagua, watch this video.